It is all live now, Chairman.
Thank you very much. So we'll reconvene our meeting and we'll start reconvene at agenda item number 8. And this item, I'm just going through pages. This item is the workplace charge points for staff and fleet. And I'll hand over to Emily Bolton, Climate Change Officer, to introduce this report. Thank you, Emily.
Thank you and good afternoon. So this paper is seeking approval for the installation of 18 7-kilowatt charge points across 18 of our county sites. And the full list is, you'll find in Appendix 6.1. And members are asked to approve expenditure from the Environment Fund of up to £120,000. So by way of a little bit of context, decarbonisation of transport, as you probably know, is key to reaching net zero and has been identified as a priority area within our climate change strategy. We have pledged that by 2025, all of our car and van fleet will be electric. But of course, to achieve this, we need the charging infrastructure in place. And that is what this project is looking to make a start on doing. The project will make use of government's Workplace Charge Point Scheme grant, which subsidises installation costs by up to £350 per socket. And so for this project is worth about £12,500. So the business case was approved at Capital Programme Board in November and is based on a procurement run in September that gave a total project cost of £99,460. The business case is based on a 20-year loan term with charge point replacement in year 11, incorporated as an additional revenue cost. And the scheme has a payback of just under 18 years. And this is based on using a starting charging fee of 22.7 pence per kilowatt hour, which then increases with inflation over time. And this starting fee is more or less on par with other similar publicly available charge points. And it also represents a cost recovery position. We aren't looking to generate revenue from this scheme. To produce the business case, a number of assumptions had to be made. And two of the key assumptions that I'll highlight are charge point utilisation. And to do this, we had to model uptake of staff vehicles transitioning to electric. And we had to assume that prices, such as for electricity, would increase with inflation over the 20-year period. Now, these assumptions do introduce a little bit of risk. However, the business case presented is inherently conservative. For example, it assumes that replacement costs for charge points will increase with inflation. However, it is likely that as the market for charge points matures, those prices will come forward lower than have been modelled. And similarly, the uptake model or the transition to electric vehicles is based on government's previous target of banning petrol and diesel new sales from 2035. And not the 2030 date that came forward in November. And as a final note on the site list, you'll see that Cambridge Professional Development Centre has been included at this time. However, as highlighted in 2.9, should charge point provision not be a planning condition as part of the CAMS 2020 programmes of innovations that are planned at site, we will not seek to install a charge point there. And that is because in combination with the proposed renovations, the site would require an electricity upgrade to facilitate the charge point. And as many of you know, these can be costly. And that combined with uncertainty over how long county intends to retain the site makes it not the best location to move forward with, unless, as I say, we're obliged to install as a planning condition. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emily, and thank you for your explanation of the prudent figures that you've put into these assumptions. Again, I think I would share your hope that going forward, the costs of these units will decrease as we see the demand increase. And hopefully, you know, a new workforce, as we've often talked about around the green agenda, etc., which will hopefully, and our understanding and costs associated will continue to come down, but it is prudent that we would, at this stage, just apply the costs and then the inflation. So thank you for that. Members, any questions for Emily on the report and the detail that Emily has highlighted? Councillor Bradnam.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for your summary, Emily. Two things. One is, I may have missed it, but the only place I can see where it refers to the actual nature of the charge point itself is at 2.13, and you talk towards the bottom of that paragraph, you talk about a 7 kilowatt dual head charge point. And I just want to be sure that the kind of charge points we're planning to install are not just, as it were, 3-pin plugs. They're actually dedicated high grade charge points. And I can see your confirming
they are.
That's good. And the other one is, as you say, on page 126 on your summary of locations, I just wanted to check, where is the Cambridge Professional Development Centre? Is that the one in near near Waitrose?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's all. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much for those questions, and I think they've both been answered succinctly with Emily nodding her head to confirm that those are both the cases. Thank you. Councillor Dupre.
Thank you. I've got a question about 2.12 on page 122. It may be my misunderstanding, but it says that this means that by 2045, it can be expected that 100% of vehicles driven will be electric. Now, I can understand that if the council turns over its vehicle fleet every 10 years, that would be the case. But I didn't know whether that was just being expressed in terms of the council's vehicle fleet, pool cars, etc. Because I can imagine that even if there are no new petrol or diesel cars being sold after 2035, there will still by 2045 be a lot of people driving petrol or diesel cars of some antiquity. Does that mean that the business case is being predicated purely on the number of or the proportion of council owned vehicles being charged in these charge points, or am I missing the point?
No, so the whole business case is purely based on staff vehicles. And so the moment we start electrifying our own fleets, that will improve the look of the business case. Because we don't have any set timelines by which we're going to electrify the fleet, I couldn't really set parameters to include in the business case on that. And so this 10-year vehicle turnover rate is a Department for Transport figure, which is that they use for their modelling for the average national rate that you will see 100% new fleet, and it's roughly every 10 years. And it was the most precise figure we could get to use for this modelling purposes.
Okay, but many staff driving their own cars and wanting, many staff driving their own cars will be driving petrol or diesel cars well beyond that date, I would have thought.
Potentially, yes, but unfortunately there are no figures to set that parameter.
Yeah.
So we had to plump for something. One thing I have done within the uptake model is to delay the staff turnover by 1 year. So we've got a lag time from what the national picture would expect to look like and what our staff would be. So there is already a slight delay built in.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Scott.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Emily. I just had a couple of questions. This is on page, it's paragraph 4.4. I did write the page number, page 124. Yes, page 124, paragraph 4.4. Now, I was very pleased that these are not going to interfere with the capacity for disability parking spaces. However, I was just concerned about where possible these bays that have the charge points will be increased in size to accommodate, etc. Because I would be concerned if everyone were not built so that they could actually accommodate to persons who drive and who have a disability, because they are the ones who will ultimately be converting to electricity, because they need, the persons who do need the car for disability reasons are going to want to have access. And I take the point that they're for county vehicles, but the point is these are being built at quite not inconsiderable expense. So from the beginning, we should start off, in my opinion, with that for every bay to be of this increased size. So that's number one. Now, number two, at paragraph 4.5, it says that there are no engagement and community implications, but internal staff communications will be required. And I'm just wondering of what that will consist and why that hasn't been done yet, I guess. But then the final point is about the sites. Number one, why were these particular sites chosen? And number two, on the business about the Cambridge Professional site, it would seem to me that if this facility is put in, it adds to the value of the site. So therefore, if we were to move out of the site, if it's one that we own, we would be able to sell it with that factored in. And if it's one that we're renting, then we should really ensure that the landlord, whoever it is, actually recognises that this addition has been made to the value of their building. Thank you.
Okay, so your first question about 4.4, with the caveat of where possible added, that was heavily due to the fact that in some of our much smaller car parks, for example, Amundsen House, where it's already quite tight for getting car parking, it might not be possible to expand both. So each charge point serves 2 parking spaces. It might not be possible to make both of them bigger because we need to look at how we might need to reconfigure the entirety of the car parks. And so it's balancing that. Certainly over time, as you say, we would expect those that need to drive would be electric. But as that transition takes place, we would also be looking at in separate projects to match the charge point facility.
Yeah. Could I just come in there with a really quick question? Therefore, I suppose that if it did happen, that in the future, the car park could be reconfigured, there would be nothing to stop it. I'm thinking about the placement of the actual charge points. If a charge point was put in place B, then if in the future it was possible to actually increase the size of that particular space, that could be done without changing where the charge point is. That's how they'd be put in, I understand.
Yes, as far as possible. It depends on nuances of the site, but typically we would see a charge point be located between 2 parking bays. And so if you simply extended out either side, you could reconfigure in those cases. And additionally, I would say that at the moment, we're not looking to install in your blue badge bays purely because it decreases the number of people that can use the charge points. However, as that demand for the charge points increases, you would also anticipate a case for locating the charge points in those blue badge bays anyway as well. Okay. In terms of your question on 4.5 on internal comms, we've not wholesale started that yet. Certainly when we've had ad hoc conversations with people, we've been talking about the fact we're installing charge points, and the project is known by those who are responsible for fleets. I've been having various conversations with different directorates and different teams who are interested. The exact comms plan hasn't been established yet, but I would assume it would be a range of utilising things like the Friday Focus on our internal newsletters, as well as specific communications to relevant people, as well as, of course, those that are based at the affected offices. Okay, and in terms of the site list, the primary driver was the grant. So the grant places set parameters around where charge points can be located. And a key one is that it has to be in your car park. So that was the first thing to whittle all the sites down to, was where we have a car park. And we went from there, whittling it down further based on loan plans for the sites, suitability, number of staff that use them, and those sorts of parameters. But I should say this is a first phase. Longer term, we would hope to be installing across the board, but we had to start somewhere. And in terms of your point on Cambridge Professional Development Centre, it very much depends on what the intention is for use of the site. And I don't know if, for example, if we were to sell it, if we'll be selling it to a developer, for example, who would knock it all down anyway, in which case having a charge point is of no additional value to them, as opposed to us selling it to someone who would retain it for use as a property. So that would be something we would look into if the decision over whether to continue at that site comes forward.
Thanks, Emily, and thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hudson next. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. If you look at paragraph 2.4, that confirms that these are, I think I'm right in assuming that these are on top of those that have already in the plans to have at the Civic Sub at Alconbury, yeah?
Yes.
Am I correct? Yeah. So we have those at the Civic Sub. These are extra. The Civic Hub at Alconbury is for obviously any fleet that are there, staff members and visitors. And in paragraph 1.5, around the other offices and areas around the county, the charge points will be for obviously fleet vehicles, staff and visitors. What I'd like to ask, please, is when visitors or staff, if it's private cars, or even members, when they get to the Civic Hub at Alconbury, when they plug their nice green cars in, which I'm sure we'll all have soon, do I assume they're going to be charged at commercial rates, or will those rates be subsidised by our taxpayers?
We are charging at commercial rates. We're not looking to subsidise this in any way.
Thank you.
The only benefit for the staff is really that they've got the charge point facility to use in a convenient location.
That's absolutely great. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And then we have Councillor Bradman.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to ask, are there, can you use these same charge points to charge bicycles, e-bikes? Because quite a lot of our staff may cycle to our local centres, and I just wondered if you'd given any thought to installation of e-bike charging points.
I haven't, but my understanding is it very much depends on the type of infrastructure and the type of bike, and I think we'd need to look at that separately. If nothing else, I should imagine if you want to charge your bike, you'd prefer to do it if we could set it up inside somewhere, rather than just being in a parking space outside. So it's a slightly different angle, but a good point.
I think it needs to be, built into any future cycle shelters, the cycle parking locations. So it's just one to sort of bear in mind for the inevitable, I'm sure, extension of your project. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bradnam. And yes, I think it's another interesting piece of work that we might look at the infrastructure for electric bike charging separately from the car. They may well cross over and offer joint opportunities, and I'm sure we'll explore those if they do.
Just to think about that. The reason I'm asking that is because we are investing a great deal in cycle infrastructure in the county, and I think that means that people are cycling much further distances than, or anticipating doing that, and for some people that means actually that's more feasible with an e-bike, because it means they haven't, it means it's more within their capacity if they've got an e-bike. So, and I know a lot of people who cycle from Waterbeach, for example, into Cambridge use e-bikes because it makes that, I mean, that's fine anyway, but longer journeys, it makes those longer journeys more feasible. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, and I'm sure I noticed Cheryl listening in and taking notes. I'm sure that will be something we can explore with the energy team and take away as an additional piece of work alongside the strategy that we have around our climate change and carbon reduction. And when it comes to distances of cycling, we have an expert that sat in this committee. I know that Councillor Wotherspoon has been known to cycle to Bristol from Cambridge. So I'm sure he would say that no distance is too far. But for the rest of us, like myself, who's not quite as able or confident on a bicycle, I would appreciate the electric bicycle addition. So thank you for highlighting those. I haven't got any other questions from members. And just again, to reiterate, members, I'm sure I echo your comments. Our thanks to Emily for both a very, very good and clear report, but also very, very good responses to all the questions we've had. So thank you, Emily, for that. And I will move to the vote on the recommendations. Again, I haven't heard any comments to the contrary to support the recommendations, so I will take it as unanimous unless I see any raised hands in the next few moments. And there's none. So thank you very much, Emily. That's unanimously supported.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, members. We now move on to our next agenda item, which is agenda item number agenda item number 9, and this is the Finance Monitoring Report for November 2020. And we have Sarah Haywood, our Strategic Finance Manager, here to introduce this report. And again, apologies for the late running of this committee and the lateness of this report coming forward, but I'll hand over to Sarah to introduce. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Chair. Right, this is a financial position as at the end of November. The bottom line overspend, the bottom line is forecasting an overspend of 2.8 million. But just to draw your attention to the fact that this forecast excludes the government grant, which we have got and will continue to get for the lost fees and charges due to COVID. And most of the COVID impact for P&E is about lost fees and charges, about lost income rather than additional costs. So it is quite substantial, the amount of grant we're getting. So for next month, this overspend will significantly come down. And so you'll see much more of a balanced position. And that's all I was going to say. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, and thank you for that really reassuring caveat that hopefully we'll see that overspend reduced. Comments, members, or questions for Sarah?
Sorry, I'm really sorry. I've got to go to another meeting. I just realised I've gone over. So thank you very much. And I regret that I can't stay to the end. Thank you.
Thank you very much for staying this long, and apologies overrun. Thank you, Councillor Scott. I haven't any other indication from members for questions or comments for Sarah. So we're asked to note the financial position, and hopefully we'll have reported, as Sarah suggested, a much improved position at a subsequent meeting. So thank you, members. We've noted that, and thank you, Sarah. We'll move on to our last agenda item of today, which is the agenda item number 10, agenda plan, training plan, appointments to outside bodies. And from the chair, I'm proposing that we change our appointment to the Natural Cambridgeshire Board. This is an appointment which we've made previously, this change is to replace Councillor Nieto on this appointment to Councillor Wotherspoon, who has kindly volunteered to step forward on this organisation. It has become clear to me that the work that Cambridgeshire Natural Partnership Board, the Natural Cambridgeshire Board, the work they're doing links very closely to the work of this committee. I certainly don't want us to duplicate the brilliant work that they're doing. And I think it will be an important thing to feed in to this committee. So that's the reason for making the change and alteration. And again, just to reiterate my thanks to Councillor Wotherspoon, who's kindly offered to step forward for that. Other than that, I don't believe there have been any changes recommended to our agenda plan since its publication. Monica?
Sorry, Chair, there has been a change. There's been an added agenda item, which is the custody tackling climate change through community-based networks and resources item, which is for the March agenda.
Thank you very much. Apologies. Yes, indeed, that addition needs to be included in our agenda plan. So that's our other piece of work with the Cuspy researchers.
And sorry, Chair, if I may remind everyone that tomorrow there's a session for training, which has been sent out by Quinton. There's just to remind everyone if you could attend this training session.
What time is that?
At 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for those additions and to our agenda, Monica, and the change to the appointments, which members will have noted, and obviously highlighting our training that tomorrow we have timetabled. So with that in mind, I'm mindful that we're losing members at a rate of knots, and that's as a result of this meeting overrunning and obviously the poor chairmanship on my part. So apologies, members, for this meeting being overrun by an hour and 20 minutes. But unless there's any further comments on that agenda item, sorry, Councillor Dupre, I've noticed you raised your hand.
Yes, I did have my hand up. I just wondered whether at this stage the reserve date was likely to be used or whether it was likely to be dropped. Sorry, the 11th of February. There's only one item on it at the moment.
Thank you. I'll hand over to Steve Cox, who will perhaps be able to answer that question.
I think we'll looking to drop that reserve date, Chairman, Councillor Dupre.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that's certainly in the context of us trying to manage the number of meetings at the minute. I'm sure all members and officers appreciate that this is incredibly challenging at the minute. The times are very challenging. And so we are trying to reduce the number of meetings, and we've successfully done so before Christmas. And where we can, we will continue to do so. So yes, it looks unlikely we'll hold our February meeting reserve date. I'm sure we'll have enough meetings that week with our normal council agenda and timetabled calendared meetings that we have. So members, we note those changes as highlighted by Monica and myself, and thank you all for your attendance today. And again, one last time to apologise for the overrunning, and I hope to see as many of you as possible at tomorrow's training. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.